Hey everybody, thanks for coming to check out today's video. One of my very first projects, I made a small little X-Wing fighter. It was nice for a desk or something like that, but it was one of my first projects, so it was a bit small. So to do the Star Wars franchise justice for my own nerdiness, I today am going to make, you already saw the title, but I am going to be making a TIE Fighter Interceptor. I will be using this 8-inch hollow steel ball, and I got a timing ring, gear, whatever, that I am going to use for the front window, but I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to also use some pistons as the connecting support from the actual ball cockpit to the big old wings that I'll be making, but that'll all get there in time. So to start out, I am going to be cutting down the outside ring of this, otherwise it stands a little bit too tall on there, and I don't like how the way it looks, so I'm going to start up by cutting this ring down, and then I'll do the rest of the parts that I am going to hopefully be putting on this, and then we'll move on to the wings and all the other shenanigans after that. But first off, let's cut down this ring.
Alright, so today I'm going to try doing things a little different than how I usually do them. I am going to actually explain what I'm doing in the actual video part a little bit more and just do the voiceover as side commentary. So at the end, if you make it there, leave me a comment. Let me know if you have seen my videos before, if you like this better. If you don't, well, let me know either way. If you're new, well, just enjoy what I'm doing here, and then if you want to compare it, check out one of my other videos. For the top hatch, I rolled a piece of 1/4-inch round bar. I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work out, so I didn't record it, so that's my bad. But I'm going to switch over to the first person view so you can see how I put the timing gear on the front for that, front window. And I don't know what the actual piece on the ship is, but if you look at a normal picture from the movies, it has two little accent pieces on the bottom, so I grabbed two random nuts and that's what I'm using for the little accent pieces. I'm going to go through, get it all welded, and we will move over to messing with the pistons.
With the cockpit all welded, I set it aside for the moment, and now I'm going to focus on making the connecting pieces from the actual cockpit to the wings. I am going to be using a few of these connecting rods from a few pistons. I don't like that if I go straight from the ball here to the outside here and run like a piece of rebar through this hole and attach it to the wing later. I feel like it's going to be a little too short, so I'm going to cut half of the top off here and use the other half of the rod and weld it onto the outside here, so it will give me a little bit more spacing on the connection, so the wings aren't super close to the cockpit. So I just have to go through and cut the tops off of this and maybe do a little bit of grinding so these fit together nicely. But I'm going to get that all cut up and get that welded together, and then I'm going to move on to the wings, so bear with me a minute.
I was a little concerned that after I cut everything apart and put them back together that they wouldn't be the same length and it would show, but luckily they were only about an 1/8 inch difference between the two after I was done, so I was pretty happy with it.
I am now going to move on to making the frames for the wings. I am using... Hold on. 5/8 rebar. I already went through, cut all of the angles, cleaned them up a bit. Obviously, when I'm all done, I will go through and clean everything extensively. And so you have some idea of the wing that I am trying to make. The other day, Adam and I decided to try and draw out the wing so I could figure out all the individual pieces. I'm not a drawing artist. I make stuff out of metal, and I guess I'm not really an artist. I don't know. It depends on your definition. Nobody really cares. But now that I have all of my components for the frames all ready to go, I am going to start putting them all together. But first, hold on. I gotta grab my hood quick because, remember, safety first. All right, there we go. We should be good. Oh. Hey, how? Man, no wonder they can't hit anything. You can't see anything out of this thing. All right, hold on. We'll get there. Yeah, looks pretty good. All right, well, okay, let's try again. Of course they can't hit anything. You can't see anything out of this. All right, well, we're gonna ignore that and go back to the tried and true method of the safety squint, because I can't see anything out of that. So we're gonna abandon that for now, and I am just going to do this the normal way. But first, hold on. The one thing I do want my safety glasses, because safety is actually important. Give me a sec.
The hat isn't really for safety. I'm just bald and it's winter. Putting together all my frames, I was pretty happy with the way I measured out and cut all of my pieces, except for the long outside one that I'm, working next to right now. Those, I was so far off on what I thought they were going to be. I had to go through and recut all of them as I was going through and making it. I think I ended up cutting an extra inch and a quarter off of each one of them, because they didn't meet the inside pieces at all the way they were supposed to. So, you win some, you lose some. When I went to set the pitch of the outside of the wings, I completely guessed on what I wanted it to be. So I think I settled on 6.5 inches at the height in the back of the wing. I know they're not going to be perfect, but I was trying to keep them semi-consistent, even though all of my miters on everything are completely random. I didn't measure well for any of this. I just eyeball cut everything, and I'm actually pretty happy with how well they, line up after I'm done. A little off on the right side, but all in all, not bad.
Now that I have the frames all cleaned up and mostly cleaned up. I'll clean more later. I have more welding to do. I am going to start making the inner panels that I want to make for each section of the wing. I'm going to be using this expanded metal that I have left over from making the trays for the giant smoker that I did. If you haven't seen it, go check that out. But I'm going to put my layout on here, and then I'm going to grab my cutting wheel and cut all of it out. Let me show you. All right, now that I got them all laid out, I just got to go through and cut them.
I don't know why I felt the need to check each piece that I cut out of the first set against the frame. Like I didn't use the frame to lay out what I was cutting out. Plus I'm going to trim everything down, get them all cleaned up and ready to install. Then I'll show you actually putting them into the frames. Even though I cut out all of the pieces and trimmed them to each section of the wings where I was going to put them in, not all of them were quite perfect. There was a little bit of gap on the edges. Nothing too severe, but when you want things to be a certain way, it kind of becomes slightly a letdown when it's not, perfect. With the panels all in, there was only one thing left to do. I had to grab them and pretend I was a spaceship and fly around a little bit.
I finally made up my mind on how I wanted to actually attach the wings to my connectors. I am going to be using 3/4 inch rebar to attach them. I am going to set the... That one needs to get trimmed a little bit. Not that one. This one. Yeah, that one. I am going to set it just behind these bars, and then I will cut out a little piece of plate to recess in there to just be a space filler. And I think it'll kind of look cool. Then I'll use more of the expanded metal to finish off the rest of this spot back here. But first I got to get these welded in, so I am going to do that now. I'm going to trim down the other piece and get that fit and welded. I'm going to get all of the measurements for these pieces, get them all cut out quick, and then I'll show you putting those pieces on in just a minute. Hold on. Now, there. I got all my parts made up, ready to put them in the wing. I did realize, though, while I was making the pieces that I won't be able to weld all the way around on the connections of the pistons to the actual frame of the wing if I put this piece in first. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put this plate in here first, then put the connecting rod on, and then I'll probably have to notch out a little bit of the expanded metal to fit around the weld and the connection rod, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, I gotta put these in.
I tried to make the piston as, level, whatever level can actually be on this, since I don't have a good way to actually measure anything. So I had to eyeball it, and it came out pretty good. It's not perfect, but, just eyeballing it, I'm not mad about it. I want to switch over to Giant's view so you can get a little better idea of how I actually tack in each piece of the expanded metal.
Now that I have the wings done, it's time to get the cockpit put in and welded on. And I'm fairly confident about putting the first wing on. I haven't really figured out how I'm going to do the second one yet, but we'll deal with that when we get to it. So, only place to start is getting the first wing on.
All that confidence didn't mean much when I put it on crooked the first time, so I had to clean off the tack to start all over. The second attempt went well though. I got it on there straight. Now I am welding the wing on solid because I thought it would be a good idea, because after it is welded it'll move a little bit, and I thought it'd make it easier to set up the second wing, which it didn't, but at least I tried, and it came out pretty good. I'm happy with how the spacing and everything looks. So now there's just one thing left that I want to put on the build before I get it all cleaned up and show you the final product. And those are the bolts that I'll be using as the ship's guns. I am using the bolts that I took out of the pistons. I wanted to use them because they have a cool spiral pattern on them. I'm sure it is to help lock them together for the piston, but they just looked really cool, so I decided to use them. I just got to get those on and, like I said, get it all cleaned up, and then I'll show you the final result.
I got the TIE Fighter all cleaned up. I haven't given it any clear coat or any paint or anything yet. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with it, so I don't want to finish coat it and then decide to change my mind later, because I might put a little bracket under it with a big piece of rebar and just stick it out in the yard and have a cool piece of yard art. But I'm not sure. So I'm not there yet, and typically this is where I'd be like, oh, let me show you that B-roll. But unfortunately, this is a little too big for my rotator that I usually use. So that's not gonna work. So the best I can do is grab the camera and just give you a close-up. So that's what I'm gonna do. I don't know, that's all I got. Thanks for checking out this video. Like, subscribe, share, do all those things, and we'll see you in the next one.